Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Dan Beasley Show. Today we're going to be discussing things that are in current news events, things that have not made the main news media, and some of the items that have. And the episode is called "When the Walls Come Tumbling Down." Um, no one wants the walls to come tumbling down in this country. However, you have to see the recent the recent outbreaks of earthquakes and weather, abnormal weather, and things that are happening in the oceans and things that are happening in outer space. You have to put them all together and you have to weigh them for what they were, folks. And there's one book that describes that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But right now in the news, Obama has fired, or the national security advisor um, has has resigned, and Susan Rice will take over that position, and she's going to be taking over from Tom Donilon, who was the prior national security advisor. And said Obama also will announce that longtime confidant Samantha Power will replace Rice at the United Nations. Okay, moving along. We've got a lot to cover today. Hubble telescope spies a huge explosion on a faraway star. NASA has given astronomers a rare look at an enormous stellar eruption, allowing them to map out the aftermaths of such blasts in unprecedented detail. Hubbard photographed the event in April of 2011. The explosion in a double star system, T Praxidus, or T Prax for short, which goes off every 12 to 50 years. So this is one of a series of things that is happening in outer space that you can say is a rarity, but it's also repeatable. So they're saying that material ejected by the previous T-Prax outburst did not escape into space, but instead they stuck around to form a debris disk about 1 light year wide around the system. And that could be the beginning of a new planetary system for all we know. Says they fully expected it to be a spherical shell, according to the Arlen Croats of Columbia University. Uh, he said in a statement, this observation shows it is a disk and is populated with fast-moving ejecta with previous outbursts. And they're saying that T-Prax is a white dwarf, the burned-out core of a star much less like our own. White dwarfs are small but incredibly dense, and they often pack the mass of a sun into the volume of the size of the Earth. T-Prax's white dwarf has a companion star, which it siphons off hydrogen fuel. And when enough of this hydrogen builds up on the white dwarf surface, it detonates like a gigantic hydrogen bomb, and it increases the dwarf's brightness by a factor of 10,000 over a single day or so. This happens again and again. It happened in 1890, 1902, 1920, 1944, and 1966, in addition to the 2011 event. Such recurrent outbursts are known commonly as nova explosions, but this is just an interest story today, in the news about what's going on in outer space. In international news, Britain is joining France and blaming Syria for nerve gas being used in Syria. This is according to Yahoo News, coming from the Christian Science Monitor. Britain has joined France in declaring that it's been used in the Syrian civil war, though it didn't go as far as France as to accuse President Bashar al-Assad's regime of deploying the chemical weapon. I don't know who would have deployed it other than the government. It is a controlled substance. The British Foreign Office said today that it found the presence of sarin in several samples from Syria, though it did not specify where the samples were acquired, and whether the rebels or the Assad regime used a nerve agent. So obviously both sides are being well supplied. Moving on to our next story. We have from the WorldNetDaily.com. The headlines are that, guess what? American Psychiatric Association says half of Americans are mentally ill. So if you're not mentally ill, look at the person next to you. Chances are they're mentally ill, according to the American Psychiatric Association. Says in a move with implications for every American, the American Psychiatric Association's new diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders takes obfuscation and euphemistic language to a whole new level, calling temper tantrums disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, and labeling grief as major depressive disorder, overeating as binge eating disorder. Or you forgetful, you can be treated for mild neurocognitive disorder, reports Ian Sample of the London Guardian. The definitions are more than semantics, however. The highly influential manual is influenced by clinic researchers, psychiatric drug regulation agencies, health insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, courts, and lawmakers. Based on the broadened definitions and categories, the new edition asserts that nearly half of all Americans will face a diagnosable mental illness at some point in their life. That is up from fewer than the 6% just 8 years ago. Sharp increase comes as the federal government begins to implement a government-controlled Obamacare system, and Democrat lawmakers use mental health issues as a reason to curb gun rights. Critics are expressing concern that the new edition of the manual could be insidiously used by the government to label certain Americans with mental disorders as a pretext for curbing rights of all kinds. So there we got politics and medicine combination. It's a dangerous brew. It's a witch's brew. Moving on to the next story. We have coming out of Atmore, Alabama, at Escambia Academy High School, there was a student that was denied a diploma and fined $1,000 for wearing an eagle feather at her graduation. For the 17-year-old Chelsea Raymer, graduating on May the 23rd was supposed to be a joyous occasion. She was excited, but it's been more than a week and she still does not have her diploma. She says it's all because of her feather. And moving along to the next story. WMD.com says is running a story on the Batman shooter out in Denver is being allowed the insanity plea. It sets the stage for a lengthy mental evaluation for the theater gunman. This is the gunman that went into Aurora Theater and opened fire during a Batman movie. And he was dressed with green hair, and he claims that he was set up. He said it was a setup. And we keep getting those stories from multiple events, where people are being arrested and they're being shown the wrong side of the jail, so to speak, and they're blaming it on other factors, not themselves. Don't know what to say about that. I mean, it's really, a part of life nowadays, it seems. In the news, blacklistednews.com, day 6 of the protest of the Turkish people against their government. More than 3,000 Turks have been injured. Turkish trade unionists are banging drums and trailing banners, marching in Istanbul Square on Wednesday, joining an unprecedented protest against Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan over what they see as his authoritarian rule. Members of more than a dozen unions chanting Tayyip resign, marched down a major avenue towards Taksim Square, and there were similar protests against Erdogan, prime minister for over 10 years and winner of 3 elections, and kills Saleh Park in the capital, Ankara. Used skirmish with police in the cities across the country in the fifth night of troubles, and the critics accused the prime minister of inflaming the situation over the weekend by describing the protesters as looters and later associating them with terrorism. Seems like it's awfully easy to use that label these days, especially if they are trying to promote progress and it doesn't settle very well with the government. Since Erdogan left the country to visit North Africa, Deputy Prime Minister Bülent Arınç has struck a more conciliatory tone. He was formerly in charge of the government, and Erdogan's absence, and he made a delegation of architects involved with the demonstrations last week against plans to rebuild a replica Ottoman-era barracks on Gezi Park in Taksim. So they used water cannons and tear gases to disperse the demonstrations, and they have used other methods as well that were more violent. So anyway, that is the news coming out of Turkey. Another blacklisted news.com source news event is Congress and the rest of the government has accused our president of not following protocol and going through the proper sequence of events to get war declared on a country before entering it and expanding his war powers. So now Congress is looking to revise and expand the president's war powers. So something seems amiss here to me, but Obama has pledged that he will not sign any law to expand the president's war-making authority under joint resolution known as the authorization of for the use of military force, or the AUMF, passed by the Houses of Congress 3 days after September 11, 2001 attacks on New York and Washington, D.C. What's more, the president said at the major foreign policy address he delivered at the National Defense University nearly 2 weeks ago that he looked forward to engaging Congress and the American people in efforts to refine and ultimately repeal the AUMF's mandate. So we've got a contradiction here. Yet in rejecting the concept of a boundless global war on terror, Obama has promised a continued series of persistent targeted efforts to dismantle specific networks of violent extremists that threaten America. These efforts will continue in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and in places such as Yemen, Somalia, and North Africa, he said. The question he did not acknowledge was, and not mention, was where does the president find a legal basis for wielding the military power in all these faraway places if the congressional authority for using it has been repealed? So I don't know if this is dodging a silver bullet or not, to try to quell down the uprising that's happening with the misuse of presidential authority, war authority. Disney's currently using electronic wristbands to track their visitors and to gather data on people as they visit their parks, and that's why companies like Google and cell phone networks are pushing the idea of using contactless technology and phones for payments, tickets, boarding passes, and more. The short answer is they want data. So this is one more step towards being chipped. It just opens up the door for more and more. It's a slippery slope. Today it's a bracelet, tomorrow it's a tattoo or an injected chip.